Thank you, teachers, staff, students, and special guests. What does it mean, the word veteran? To me, the definition is anyone who swears under oath to defend this great nation of ours against all enemies, even if the end result may be defend to the death. Myself and many others have taken such an oath when we decided to join the military. Does any of us think of what the end result may be? I would say no. I am a third-generation Army veteran. My grandpa served in the South Pacific in World War II, my dad in Vietnam, and I have been since November 22nd of 1993. The World War II era veterans have been called the greatest generation. These men and women, some who may be among us today, have answered the call by the President after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Both men and women signed up to defend our great nation against another attack on the home front. Those who did not join the military also contributed to the war effort. Women went to work in factories producing vehicles, planes, tanks, and whatever was needed by the men overseas. These men and women returned after the war and were welcomed back with open arms by all. Then came the Korean War. Once again, men and women were called upon to defend our freedom and the freedom of the people of South Korea. When this war was over, the soldiers were again welcomed home with open arms. A few years later, the Vietnam War started, and with the depleted U.S. forces, Congress had to start a draft to get the troop strength back up to where it needed to be. This meant every male, 18 and older, who was required to register for selective service, were drafted into the military to support the war effort. Many of them did just that. Others, however, tried to dodge the draft by leaving the country. For those who served their country, the welcome home was not as widespread as the wars before. As many of our fighting men and women returned home, they were called names such as baby killers and many other derogatory names as they were walking through the airports on their way home to see their families. Some were even spit on and beaten up. Why, you may ask? I'm not sure anyone can give you a straight answer why these American soldiers were treated so poorly. However, I will be the first one to say to each and every one of you, thank you. Thank you for your service. The next war was the Gulf War. Iraqi forces had invaded the country of Kuwait. During this war, both active duty, reserve, and National Guard soldiers were called upon by our nation to defend the Kuwaiti people and push the Iraqi forces back across their border. By this time, in our nation, fighting men and women were once again welcomed home with open arms. I got the call on February 14, 2003. I was told I was being transferred to a unit in southeastern Kansas. When I arrived there, I could tell the unit was pretty much like a family, and it was nice to see that they welcomed me back in with open arms, or that they welcomed me into the unit with open arms. We spent about a month and a half in the small town of Independence, Kansas, getting our equipment ready to go to Fort Riley. It was about the second week of April, we convoyed to Fort Riley. We were there for about roughly 2 months. We were getting trained up on the Iraqi war tactics and how to defend our post and things like that. It was a week before, I believe it was a week before Memorial Day, when we got the news that everybody had been waiting to hear. We were getting ready to fly. We boarded a plane at Forest Field in Topeka, and one of the funniest things about that whole deal about getting on the plane, somebody had started singing the song "Leaving on a Jet Plane," and within probably 10-15 seconds, you had 150 to 200 people that had all chimed in to sing as we were getting on the plane, kind of to break the monotony and to ease everybody's spirits. The flight over to Iraq took roughly 26 hours. Anybody that's been on a plane flight overseas, especially to countries like Vietnam, Korea, places like that, they can tell you that those plane flights aren't fun. You're in the air all that time. We landed in Kuwait City at about 04:30 in the morning, and as we were taxiing to the terminal, the pilot came over the loudspeaker, and he told us, "Welcome to Kuwait City, where it's a balmy 115 degrees." And let me tell you, being from the Midwest, I know heat. I don't. 115 degrees is, especially at 4:30 in the morning, is pretty unbearable. We were sent to a little camp in Kuwait called Camp Victory to we had to get acclimated to the weather. And it took us about 2 weeks. And while we were there, a few of us got to go down to the port and unload the vehicles that had been shipped over on ships, and to get ready to go for our marching orders north. We were there, like I said, we were there at Camp Victory in Kuwait for probably 2-3 weeks, and finally we got our marching orders north. And once again, the feeling is really hard to explain whenever you know you're going to be put in harm's way, but whenever the actual word is given that we're going, it puts you on edge. And I would say that's probably about the easiest way to explain it. You're just whenever you're traveling north, especially in Iraq, and the U.S. forces at this time had only secured part of the country for about 45 days. So there were still parts of Saddam's forces that were in small groups that were attacking convoys as they headed north. So we were definitely on edge, and just crossing the border was a feat in itself. The trip north took about 2 days. We drove about 14 hours the first day, had to stay overnight, and then it was about another 12-hour trip on the second day to get to our FOB, or our Forward Operating Base, LSA Anaconda, which was a former Iraqi Air Force base that the U.S. they had pushed the Iraqi Air Force out of it, and we took it over. Summer times in Iraq, if you're from the Midwest, it's real hard to imagine there's not a cloud in the sky from about April to close to this time of the year, about November. And believe it or not, I actually seen temperatures that tipped the mercury to right at 150 degrees. And if you want to experience what it's like summer times in Iraq, I wouldn't suggest it, but go home this afternoon, this evening, turn your oven on, set it at 150 degrees, and stick your head in there. You'll get a real good idea of what 150 degree weather's like. The soil in Iraq is really different from around here too. They do get rain, and usually seems like it lasts from about Thanksgiving time till almost the first or second week of April. But after so many of our large vehicles that drove over the dirt and stuff while we were there, it turned the soil consistency to almost baby powder. And it was about 6-8 inches deep in spots you could step, and you swear you had lost your foot. You look down, it's just a cloud of dust around your leg. Our post in Iraq was actually dubbed Mortaritaville. We, on average, we would have probably anywhere between 18 to 20 mortar attacks a day that the insurgents in the former Iraqi forces would they would shoot up to anywhere between 18 and 24 mortars at us in a 24-hour period. Luckily, though, the insurgents and the former Iraqi forces were they were in such a hurry to do this so they wouldn't get caught, that they wouldn't take the safety pins out of the mortars, so you would hear them come in at you and expect a big explosion, and nothing would happen. It took a while to get used to that too. My primary job overseas was to work on vehicles and follow convoys in a recovery vehicle back and forth from where we were stationed to Baghdad International Airport. Anybody that's been in Iraq knows that certain stretch of highway between where we were at and Biop is what we called it, was known for getting hit with IEDs, small arms attacks, just about anything that the insurgents could throw at us. I didn't see much combat. There were some people in my unit that did. Luckily, every one of us made it home. Some of us didn't make it home. Everybody made it home, but we had some of us that were hurt. And anybody that's been overseas will be the first to tell you they're not there to be a hero. So these movies and whatever you see where soldiers and whatever, their main goal the whole time they're in war is to be a hero. And it's not like that at all. All we're doing is trying to survive and get back home to our families. In closing, I would like to let everybody know that not just on Veterans Day, anytime you see a veteran, please walk up to them, give them a hug, shake their hand, or just thank them. Thank them for their service. Because I'll be the first to let you know, the sense of pride that comes over you is really hard to explain. Thank you.